What does Congress need to do to control Wall Street and ensure we don't repeat the financial abuses of the recent past?
Very good. This is actually, I'll give you a quick update. The House has actually passed the Financial Regulatory Reform Bill, and you'll be hearing more about this being taken up in the Senate, including Senator Bennet will certainly have a role in those discussions that we'll all be watching very closely in the months ahead, because this is one of the most important issues for our country. This is what led the financial meltdown, really one of the causes of the recession, one of the causes of the enormous taxpayer bailouts, and so forth. And it's really great to have somebody like Michael who understands these dynamics, has worked with structured debt products. You can't pull one past him. And I'm glad to have somebody like him, because there's not a lot of them in the United States Senate that truly understand this. He's really working now on the issue of systemic risk, so we don't ever find ourselves again having to figure out who's too big to fail, who do we have to bail out. We have to prevent any future bailouts, and Michael is committed to doing that. He also wants to make sure that our regulatory reform system is no longer outdated. And we look at some of the new products that have been created, like derivatives, like new types of leverage products and credit default swaps, and we need to create a regulatory framework that eliminates the gaps in regulation that really gave rise to this crisis in the first place. Finally, Michael Bennet is working to strengthen consumer protections and put safeguards in place to make sure that Americans who behave responsibly but had been preyed upon have a recourse. He supported a cap, for instance, recently on credit card interest rates at 15%. That's a vote that the credit card companies will be out to get him on, but it was the right vote for consumers. Michael Bennet will always side with consumers, and he brings a sophisticated understanding of the financial markets and what we need to do to ensure that consumers get a fair shake and we prevent another catastrophic meltdown and create a new regulatory framework for the 21st century for our financial markets.
Well, with all due respect, the Senate Banking Committee had a chance to side with consumers last spring when Senator Schumer presented a proposal that would have protected Americans from foreclosure by allowing them to go to bankruptcy court and renegotiate the terms of their mortgages. The Senate Banking Committee had a chance to protect consumers in that case, and they decided not to. They killed that proposal. I recognize that if you serve on the Senate Banking Committee, you are likely to be a beneficiary of contributions from the banking industry. But that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem, in my view. In answer to your question, if we want to make sure that institutions never become too big to fail and eligible for taxpayer-funded bonuses to their CEOs, as we've seen just in the last few months, perhaps we should conclude that those institutions are too big to exist in the first place. You're electing here a senator, not just a speechmaker. And the truth is, it's been a year and a half since some of the nation's biggest financial institutions contributed to this crisis. A year and a half. And all we've seen so far is a lot of talk. We've seen action, it's true, in the House, but we haven't seen the Senate follow suit. If I were in the U.S. Senate, here's what I'd do. First, I would restore the separation that used to exist under the Glass-Steagall law between commercial banking and investment banking activities. That's one. Second, I would make sure that some of those investors have some skin in the game so that when they're gambling with somebody else's money, their own is at stake as well. Third, I would create the sort of consumer financial protection agency that might protect consumers from these sorts of fraudulent and deceptive practices. We need that protection, and an agency of that kind is the best way to do it. I'm the only candidate in this race who's turning down the contributions from the financial industry because I don't want to have to I think this is important because I don't think a senator should ever have to choose between doing what's right for his constituents and what might be profitable for his biggest contributors. And that's the sort of reform I think we need in the financial industry today.
Thank you. Follow-up questions on Wall Street, finances? Yes, sir.
How do you feel on the Move Your Money movement that is gaining so much momentum around the country now? We're taking our money out of the banks that are too big to fail and moving them into locally owned banks and credit unions. And Jared, if Mr. Bennet, Senator Bennet hadn't given you a note on this, you can answer personally.
Yeah. Either one can start. That's all right.
Well, I think that's an appropriate way for consumers to take action on their own. The truth is we need federal action to reform this system. We've had some experience in Colorado. We cracked down on predatory lenders. We regulated mortgage brokers. We tried to protect Coloradans from this scam. We tried to improve financial literacy by adding that to the curriculum of Colorado so that we can educate a new generation of more sophisticated consumers who are less likely to be susceptible to these scams in the first place. But only a federal government can reform Wall Street. It's the only institution with the power to stand up to that industry. And as long as the industry turns the U.S. Senate into a wholly owned subsidiary, we'll never get the reform we need.
So, this is a question that I think is, and I'll tell you, what my own beliefs on it. I think it's more relevant for people running for state treasurer. I hope you ask Kerry Kennedy and others, as people, your county commissioners, people who have public monies that they're trying to decide what to do with. It's a very important question. I personally believe that we should take the public money or anything. I would, encourage you to take your private money out too from companies that have received TARP funds. I think that it's a good way to penalize them. It's a good way for you as a consumer to execute your choice to do it. It's a good way for county governments, for city governments to do it. I don't think we should have used those funds to buy effectively those companies too. I mean, there needed to be some role. And I think the original, we were sold a bill of goods. This is before Michael Bennet was in the Senate, because of course he would have stopped it unilaterally had he been there, no problem. But we were sold a bill of goods. Secretary Paulson told the Senate and the House that he was going to use the money to buy the mortgage-backed securities. Remember that? And they were going to take them off the books of the banks, put them on the books of the government. That actually would have worked out. Instead, they started giving the money with low interest rates to banks, buying equity stakes in the banks, totally different than what they originally said. Now, that's all the fault of Bush and Paulson, nothing to do with Obama, nothing to do with the current Senate. But that's how we wound up where we are. And I personally, on a personal level, do support an effort to divest from some of those banks and would encourage you guys to do that as well.
Okay, one more question. Yeah. The question was, did either candidate support Ben Bernanke being reappointed?
Yeah, you voted yes. Yes. So, and I agree with that vote. Look, this is a very, very difficult position, and part of that position is the reliability and sort of the trust that the markets have in somebody in that position. A change at this point, among other things, regardless of whether you think he was marginally competent, he's mediocre, a change would have sent shockwaves through the markets at a time where we really didn't want to do that. So for that reason, among many others, and I don't think he's done an abysmal job, I think he's done a fine job bringing the global markets back from the brink of collapse, which he did play a role in. I agree completely with Senator Bennett's vote on that.
Well, what sends shockwaves, I think, not just to the markets, but to the families across America, is a financial system that has run amok. And it's hard for me to see how we can confirm the same team that helped contribute to this mess unless we're willing to hold them accountable.